Hi, everybody. This is Jason Henderson, the host of the Castle of Horror and Castle Talk podcast. This is an episode that actually we did not record. This is an episode of the Monster Movie Happy Hour, our amazing friends who mix their fandom of horror movies with their love of mixed drinks. They did an interview with me about The Bookman, which is my new book coming out early in June under my pseudonym Peyton Douglas. I wanted you guys to hear it because it was a really fun conversation and I was overjoyed to do it, and any chance to listen to the Monster Movie Happy Hour is a good opportunity. So thank you very much. Here it is.
My 4 years in Marine Corps taught me to listen to anybody who has an authoritative voice. So.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's usually not a good thing, but you know.
Wow. That's deep, man. There's so much in that statement, honestly.
It sounds better than it is. Okay, Here we go. Let's just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Monster Movie Happy Hour. This episode is one of our monstrous musings, which generally are shorter episodes, wherein the crew briefly chats about a select topic and then gets lost in a far-ranging conversation about horror and history, and inevitably, Scott and I give Mary a lot of useless life advice. This time around, we have a special guest, Jason Henderson. Jason Henderson is the host of the Castle of Horror and Castle Talk podcasts, the editor of the Castle of Horror anthology series, including this summer's volume number 3, Summer Lovin', and he's the author of Quest for the Nautilus, Young Captain Nemo from Macmillan Children's Books. His new horror novel, under the pseudonym Peyton Douglas, The Bookman, debuts on June 2nd. So welcome, Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I am super, super excited, and I'm actually looking at you guys through Zoom, so I'm dying to know, are you using the video of this, or are we just talk, or are we audio? My point is, can I get up and walk around, or are we?
Do whatever you want. Yeah. We just do this because we like the feeling of being together in a space, which was
I like that.
Of the
well, that way also, I can raise my hand and
sure,
and we can respond to one another's.
Oh, absolutely! Please do.
Visual
do.
By all means. By all means.
So just to make sure, let's see, I am one of the 3 hosts: David Geister, picture book illustrator, historical painter, and thanks to Jason, I actually get to be a published author this spring. I'm looking forward to that. So thank you.
It's a lovely story. It actually is a very thoughtful love story.
Dave Geister, Renaissance man.
Yeah, exactly. And who are you, sir? Who are you, sir? With that
by comparison, I'm a shadow, a mere shadow of Mr. Geister. I have no profound accomplishments. Currently, I spend my time primarily lounging about the house, doing very little. But I am, as I've said, seriously, for one time, I am a history enthusiast. I'm not sure if I'm really a historian, but you could call me that. I wouldn't be insulted. And otherwise, again, I'm a mere gadfly, at least these days.
And ladies and gentlemen, that was our Scott Cheeseborough.
Yes, prattling on and on.
I don't know if I could ever stack up.
Good luck. Give it a try, Mary.
I'll make a valiant attempt. I'm Mary Chowman, historian, farm mama, and perhaps not a gadfly, but more of I feel like I identify more with the very annoying blackbirds that sit outside my window and screech in the middle of the night.
Wow.
George Harrison lied to all of us. Blackbirds screech in the dead of night.
Oh, nice.
So I was going to say, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Forget it.
Usually, Jason Scott says that we try to squeeze it out of him, but we're not going to do that this time. So,
okay,
Jason, we really want to hear about this new book, the Bookman.
Yeah,
Scott and I have both read it, and we've already told you this, but we really like this story a lot. I mean, there are so many good things, and I know we don't want to spoil it for the listeners. But
you can kind of go crazy, go wherever you want, use your best judgment. But I don't want to let the conversation go wherever you want it to.
Okay,
I'm not afraid of that, and I am tweeting every day, just stuff from wherever where I'm taking stuff from the novel and saying that's based on this thing or that thing.
Yeah.
So I'm tweeting spoilers all over the place.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So maybe you could start by actually explaining what's in a nutshell, what is the thrust of the story? Who's the main character?
You're the first human being in my life, in my actual life, who's ever asked me what the story of this book is. So it is Gidget with demons, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It is 1958,
Yep.
and a girl named Franny Cohn, who has a life that's very patterned after the life of the historic Gidget, which was Kathy Kohner. A girl named Franny Cohn is getting over a bad bike accident, and she decides to learn to surf. And at the same time that she's learning to surf, she starts helping out her uncle at his groovy beatnik cafe.
Cafe Monstro.
Cafe Monstro, and which is very much based on a real place in Laguna Beach, where all this is taking place. And she discovers that he has a special way of psychically helping people, and they fight off a demon that comes looking for them. That's the easiest I can explain it. It is Gidget with demons.
It's wonderful.
It is. It makes it especially unique, in this sort of fiction.
Yeah, I don't know, Scott. I can't really compare it to anything else that I've read. And
not really. No.
That was for me one of the joys of reading it.
I mean, one of the things that happened, when you're trying to sell a book is, actually, to be honest with you, I never took this to publishers elsewise. Castlebridge Media is a company that I founded with Incher Yo about a year ago. We've been publishing the anthologies, and I just decided that I literally, this hasn't even been rejected by anybody. I've never taken it to another publisher. And the reason I'm doing it as a pseudonym, because I'm using this fake name, is because my agent was like, well, everybody knows you as, the Young Captain Nemo and all those middle grade novels.
Yes.
So she was like, you can do whatever you want, but I would prefer that you use a different name so it doesn't interfere with what you do from day to day. So,
we thought that might be the case, right?
Yeah, so Peyton Douglas was born. Douglas is my father's name, and it's my middle name. And Peyton is obviously named after my favorite movie and television series, Peyton Place. Yes. So and that was Peyton Place was one of those wacko mid-century things that I was trying to drag stuff into, because really the story of, hey, let's have the story of Gidget but with demons is really just sort of a skeleton on which to hang as much mid-century crap as I could just get my hands on and pull into one book.
Well, I'd say you hang that crap really well.
Thank you.
Yeah. You do that. You do that deftly. It's not obvious. It's not burdensome. It's not like you're giving all sorts of cues. Hey, look at this reference. It's
right.
It's done very seamlessly.
In fact, speaking of references, I have to thank you for squeezing Peter Cushing in there in a very just a very subtle way. I had to share that with Mary because, as you know, she is in love and intends to marry Christopher Lee. In spite of the obvious difficulties there. And of course,
no challenge insurmountable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And of course,
do you know what my favorite Christopher Lee is, by the way?
Pardon?
Honest as a heart attack. Do you know what my and Mary, I think I'm just wondering if you dig the Christopher Lee in City of the Dead. It seems to me that would be a character that appeals to you, because because he's so suave and debonair and authoritative, but presumably a normal guy, And
I feel like Christopher Lee has just so much panache
Yes.
And he wears it so effortlessly. It's just, I feel like they just let him go on the screen and they're just like, more, give us more.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this is not what you wanted to talk about, but honestly, now, my favorite Lee, by the way, is I got it right here. Jess Franco's Count Dracula.
Oh my God.
Oh, really?
I watched that one.
Yeah.
Yes, we watched that together.
Yeah,
The movie. Oh, I got it. Did you record an episode on it?
This
No,
was in
no.
we watched this
the
before we
time.
were doing the podcast.
Okay. It's I mean, it's slow and meandering and makes no sense. It doesn't have the best script. However, there is a moment when Christopher Lee just gets up and paces in front of a fireplace and recites about a page and a half from Dracula.
Yeah.
And that's great. And what are movies really but moments, right? So in the end, not a very good movie, but if you can watch that monologue, that's really kind of worth it.
Again, I don't want to take us too far off path, but that's a very interesting phenomenon that one could do a whole show on, is simply films that are otherwise mediocre or fair, but may have one scene that is so salient with you as a viewer that really like it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Because there are plenty of films like that the film is like fair at best, but there's one scene that's really great.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's why, in fact, that's why I know you asked a question about Peter Cushing. I'm going to get back to it.
Hey, no.
That's why I love these so-called hangout episodes that we do in Castle of Horror.
Yes.
Usually where we watch something that nobody would call their favorite film, but there's like usually something that just like kind of makes us happy, and that we enjoy talking about. But Peter Cushing, in the Laguna Beach story in the Bookman.
Yes.
They have, I believe it's a painting. See, the guy, the artist in the cafe that Franny works at is based on a real artist named Bert Schoenberg, who was working out of and was a co-owner of Cafe Frankenstein from 1958 to 1962 in Laguna Beach, exactly where I described the cafe.
Oh, fantastic!
And he did all of this original art, and you can sometimes see it. Like it turned up in House of Usher because Schoenberg painted the portraits in there. Anyway, he does a work of Frankenstein, and she describes that. She says, "Hey, this Frankenstein looks like Sherlock Holmes." And the artist goes, "Oh well, this guy played Sherlock Holmes." And so forth.
Look at Mary. Mary's getting all giddy.
That's one reference. I feel the way that Dave has described all of these references, and I agree entirely. And I looked at this part in the book because I wanted to find it because Dave was very excited about it, and so I of course became very excited about it as well. But you refer to all of these references as Easter eggs for the Monster Kid.
Yeah,
that's true. And that's totally true.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what this is. And no one references Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes these days. Even though he's I mean, I could stand on a soapbox for years. Peter Cushing's the best Sherlock.
He was an excellent Sherlock. I have not watched the BBC television series that he did.
Oh, I know,
several years later. But I've seen like the opening credits of it and some scenes of it because he did Hound of the Baskervilles again as a two-parter in that TV series.
Yeah, yep.
You watch it, Mary?
I've seen parts of it. I was a big Sherlock Holmes fan when I read all of them when I was about 10 and became obsessed with Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
And so I had this very strong picture in my mind of who Sherlock Holmes looked like, how he acted, how he talked. And then I saw Peter Cushing play him and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I imagined. And so then he's spoiled every other Sherlock Holmes movie for me. Like, but he's fabulous. It's worth watching just for him.
He's wonderful. And and he did that. I can't remember when his BBC series was, but it was a few years after his Hound of the Baskervilles, and I'd love to see it. I don't even know if it's available. It might be available somewhere.
I'll see if I can track it down and I'll get back to you.
It would be a shame, but I know that a lot of BBC programming that was done in the 60s was done on tape and isn't available anymore.
Yes.
They just destroyed the tapes. They never thought that they'd have any value beyond that their immediate broadcast or rebroadcast.
No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. And
I mean, that's what's happened with a lot of, and I'm not a big fan, but I'm aware of this. That's what happened with a lot of the older Doctor Who episodes. They just pitched them after a couple of broadcasts because they thought no one's going to watch this 15 years from now.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Jason, if we could get back to Bookman for a moment, I would be really kind of curious if you could just address your own personal fascination with that culture, which is to say the Peyton Place culture, the Gidget culture, that mid-century.
Right.
Surf culture.
What is it? Surf culture.
And this one is very much a surf culture thing.
Right. Just in general, that mid-century America. What's
the wild thing? First of all, a lot of people have read it and said the crazy thing is this felt like a fresh setting for them because because a lot of stories are not set on the beach.
Well, exactly.
50s. But I really got into it because I was researching. It started out. I came across Gidget, the movie.
What in the world is a Gidget? It's a girl, a cuddling, befuddling teen who set out to find her a man of her own and found seven young beachcombers with a single thought: to enjoy life and love without working. Meet Kahuna, their leader, and Waikiki, Stinky, Lord Byron, Hotshot, Lover Boy, who tried to live up to his name, and Moondoggy, who was quite a guy.
There's no such thing as the next best thing to love.
You'll get to meet them all when you see Columbia Pictures' Gidget, brought to the screen from the bestseller that proves a teenager can be delightfully juvenile without being...
And I was really struck by Cliff Robertson and how his character was carrying this undercurrent of war trauma, which was obvious from his dialogue. And then I just started following that line as I started researching other stuff. I started researching tiki culture and co-wrote a history book, very, very mild history book for the History Press with Adam Foshko from HBO about the meaning of tiki bars and tiki culture and all that mid-century stuff.
And for our listeners, can you give us the full title? I should be able to remember it off the top of my head, but I can't.
No, it's fine. That book is called California Tiki.
Okay,
it was called California Tiki because the History Press always wants every book to be attached to a particular state.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, as I was doing research, I was not really so interested in going deep on tiki culture. I was really interested in just exploring mid-century pop culture.
Yes.
And so I spent a lot of time in tiki, but I spent a lot of time in there on surf music and surfing. And basically I had ended up doing all of this crazy research, and I became super obsessed with Gidget over and over again because I found her story so fascinating. The actual Gidget, Kathy Kohner, was born in Germany, came to the United States as a baby, and then became a surfer when she was a teenager. And her father, who had emigrated from Germany at the beginning of Nazi Germany, he became a screenwriter in Hollywood, like a lot of people who came to the United States. And he borrowed, and the story is murky, but he borrowed her diaries and turned them into a novel. That novel took off like gangbusters.
Yes.
And it changed. It really changed history because her novel was about surfing and the surf culture, people hanging out on the beach, listening to music and bonfires and doing. But it was very much a local like thing for middle class kids to do in the late 50s. After that book, the book made it known to the entire country. The movie came out the following year, and suddenly you couldn't find a space on a beach in Southern California. So,
and the movie was Sandra Dee, correct?
The movie had Sandra Dee. The movie also I don't even know how to describe it. It turned her into a wasp. I mean,
So that
Francie, and I forget what Gidget's last name is in the book, but regardless, she becomes the little Jewish teenage Kathy Conner character. Gidget becomes the little a very Anglo wasp blonde Sandra Dee.
Something acceptable to kids.
Well, yeah, and just
or
so
perceived
that,
as
she's
acceptable.
less
Something mainstream.
mainstream, so she's less othered, because it's not like there were no Jews in Hollywood, right? But to make her into just a person who looked exactly like the main audience, it was something that they felt would guarantee them a hit. But it took away the interesting story at the heart of what Gidget is, which is that she is embracing a culture that is all about this limitless expansion going on after the war, and she herself is an inheritor of the terrors of the war. And her story was told by her father, which is something I don't even get into in this novel, because this novel doesn't go that deep into Gidget. But anyway, this is all the stuff that I just thought. So I was like, let's just make her into the model for a main character. And I apologize. If you get me started, I'll start. Just
No.
That's why
you're in good company.
Yeah, that's why you're here. We want to hear this.
Yeah.
So
but to give you an idea of the characters and where they come from, Gidget is the model for Franny. Kahuna is the model for a character called Hookie.
Yep.
And then I went over to the Frankie and Annette stuff.
I thought so. Yep.
So that her uncle Saul is actually patterned after Don Rickles, who played the guy who runs the bar.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But then the historicals, most of that stuff was happening up in not Santa Monica. It was happening up in Malibu. I wanted to put this in Laguna Beach because I became fascinated by Cafe Frankenstein and the stories of Cafe Frankenstein and the beginning of the folk music movement. so that her Franny's love interest Noop is also running a band that is patterned after an actual band that was happening at Cafe Frankenstein.
Oh, wonderful!
And they're sort of trials and tribulations because it was complicated to be an integrated band in 1958. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's an Easter egg on like every page. I mean, basically.
and I have to ask you, I'm curious about, this may be your technique, but when you construct a book like this, or any book for that matter, or a book intended for adults anyway, do you write a general outline or a framework, and then once you've got that, did you go, oh, I'd like to include something about this, or I'd like to include something about this, or does that just happen?
Normally I do outline using a spreadsheet. So I tell everybody you start with your basically a 1, 2, and 3 on a sheet of paper, sort of the beginning, and then Act 2 is pushing you towards the goal, and then Act 3 is a new goal as you push towards home, and that's more or less true. This one was much more weird and alchemical. I started out writing a comic book outline to sell this as a comic book series.
Oh, okay.
And Franny was not going to be the main character. Originally, it was going to be an anthology series all around the bar. And
cool.
And I wasn't able to bring that together, and so I ended up just picking one of the stories, which was Franny, and making her the main character of this book.
Okay.
And so there's other stories, but and it followed her. And then I did something I've never ever done before, which is that this book I wrote by hand. So I got spiral notebooks like this one here,
yes.
And I just went out to park benches and stuff, and I just wrote the book with
wow.
a pen.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did that feel? Purely from a well, I guess from multiple standpoints. I mean, you've got the tactile feel of the pen. on the paper. You've also got what I can only imagine is a certain degree of frustration because you can't just lift sections and drop them and move them around.
Right.
So how did that feel?
It was really neat. As far as composition goes, it's very, very efficient because you can, first of all, if you have a goal, you say you want to do 1,000 words a day, then you can kind of figure out that's say, gonna make this up. Like let's say you find out that the way you write, that's 5 sheets of paper. So you go, if I get 5 sheets of paper, I got my 1,000 words more or less.
Sure.
And you can be anywhere. You don't have to be plugged in, so you can just go out and write outside and listen to music. The downside was exactly what you're talking about. You can't write as fast as you can think. And once you're done, you have to type it all back in.
Sure.
So this was the hardest book I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
To get into a computer. And in fact, a lot of the time what I did was I would take the book and narrate it into a recording, which I would then use a crude, whatever you call it, where you're just transcribing text, speech to text.
Yes,
so,
yes.
That was the best, because there was just so much of it. So it's a whole book, So I don't know. Kevin J. Anderson does this, by the way. I've known him for a heck of a long time, and he writes all of his books by narrating them while he walks around.
Oh,
but he hires a human to
do all the transcription.
To do the transcription.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've done transcription before, and it's an interesting process.
Yeah. I assume you have to make editorial choices while you're doing the transcription.
Sometimes, yeah, because I've transcribed interviews, oral history interviews, and the thing that I found the most interesting grammatically was figuring out what punctuation to use.
Yeah.
Yes. Figuring out how, is this pause a comma, or is this pause a semicolon, or is this pause
or is it a dash?
Yeah. How should this? How does this take up space on the page? But that must have been so interesting, being able to see how the words, to physically write the words down. I feel like it gives you a different relationship with the language than purely typing it.
Yeah, it does. I have no idea if I like it better or worse. I have no idea.
Do you think you would do it again?
Oh gosh.
That way.
I don't know. It was hard. I mean, it's yeah, probably maybe for another in this series, another Franny book, because you want to try to sound like yourself.
Sure.
Right. So chances are the language sounds the way it sounds because it was written by hand and then in other words, all these accidents add up to something that you got to try to reproduce again.
So, I hate to steer it back to in part to my original question, but I'll narrow it down.
There was a question? I'm sorry.
No. I appreciate your, explaining. I mean, that's what this is all about. No, I'm wondering, as far as those Easter eggs, quote unquote Easter eggs that we mentioned.
Yeah.
Did you come up those as you did along in a normal way in writing the story, or did you think about it before actually writing out the complete story and go, I think I want to mention this and this and this at some point in the story?
No, it would just like fit in a place, parts of it, because it's also kind of a commentary on surf movies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things in the plot are just going to happen because they have to, because they're tied into that narrative.
Yes, sure. Yep.
But I knew that since she is learning this special way of being able to help people with their future, she becomes kind of a psychic therapist to people. I was like, well, these should be some famous people. So, I'm not going to give anything away. Frankie Avalon is one. Like Frankie Avalon walks in. And I was just having a good time with that. But no, I didn't have like a column and said, all right, so we can cross Frankie Avalon off, and we can cross off George Burns because he showed up in the bar.
Yeah, right. Honestly, it was so much fun just discovering those pieces, and yet in the midst of it all, there is this horrific element, this demon.
Yeah.
And I really can't think of another book that had that feel to it, or another character, another
Thank you.
villain or monster that had that feel. Could you talk a little bit about the demon without
Yeah,
spoiling?
the actual bookman is a demon who steals people's potentiality.
Yep.
He's one of the original demons that brought stories to Earth, and he rides the back roads of America in a beat up old Morris Minor pickup truck.
Yep.
Which is a lovely old truck if you get a chance to look at it.
That was going to be my small question that I was going to ask you as to why you picked that model of truck.
I just thought it was a nice looking truck, and the way that he looks to the everyday person, at least in the skin that he's wearing, is he has a nice goatee, and he has like suede elbow patches.
Yes.
And
an
just,
academic. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like an academic who
He's
goes
got the pipe.
He has a pipe.
He's got the pipe.
He has a pipe.
A spitting image of Scott Cheesebro.
Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't remember if we gave him the hat, but you really do picture him having probably.
Oh yeah, he's got the hat with the feather in it.
Yes, the suede. Right. Yes. Thank you. But inside of him is not a body, but inside of him are origami birds.
Yes,
that
just blew my mind when I thought, oh my God, is this going where I think it is? But you made those little bastards seem so horrific.
Thank
They're
you.
dangerous.
Yeah,
These are like paper cuts on a grand scale, folks. Serious paper cuts.
It's just so nutty, but I loved it. I just loved the idea of this harmless looking guy who's actually full of dangerous origami sparrows. I mean, so I can't explain that at all, other than like that was the bad guy, and we got the Golem in here.
Yes, I was going to ask you, Nick. I love the exchanges between the Golem and Saul and Franny. Some of the dialogue, I was up here laughing out loud several times. My wife wanted to know what was going on.
Well, that one came from, and that was actually, I can't take credit for it. They decided to make a Golem, and I was like, what should the personality of Golem be? And it was actually Adam Foshko, my co-writer on California TV, who said he should sound like Brother Theodore. And I said, oh, that's brilliant. Brother Theodore was this monologuist who was in the early days of David Letterman, and his humor was around how dark and pessimistic he was. That was the gag. It was also not so much a gag. That was just him.
Yeah,
and
right.
It was just funny, and he knew how to say these deeply pessimistic things,
yes,
in such a way as to get everybody to laugh.
Yes.
And that was, again, part of just the amazing, that was just the wisdom of Brother Theodore. And you can, on YouTube, you can find bits that he did on like the Jerry Lewis show and David Letterman and stuff. So, yeah, it is possible that this might be a hard book to place. It is possible. So, I don't know.
I personally think that's one of the beauties of it.
Oh, thank you.
I really. Oh, I think so. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a reason none of us are in marketing. So.
Well, I'm hoping that in a world with Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, people can wrap their heads around.
You know what? Oh, I'm glad you made that. I'm glad you mentioned that because, I mean, they're all in that world. They're contemporaries.
Except for she's in New York.
Right. But in terms of the country and the sensibility.
Yes. Well, and it's such I don't know why we don't get to Mary. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I just said the material culture, just the world that we all sort of create around the mid-century.
Yes, yeah. I mean, and it's such an interesting time because, again, the economy is exploding, right? There's all of this freedom. This freedom, like at least like the largely white middle class has never experienced.
Right.
Where people can get their hands on resources they never could before,
yep.
And it's so it winds up being this time of what seems like relentless optimism, but at the same time, that just like becoming an adolescent and suddenly having more freedom, that also brings in a lot of heartache and and pain and analysis. Like I say, if you watch movies of that period, they are still haunted by the war, even
Yes.
though the war's in the past.
Right.
The one that really is like one of my all-time favorites, and I wrote an entire chapter on it in California Tiki, is The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, which is all about his, even though it's 10 years after the war, it's all about his Gregory Peck's inability to put the experiences of the war behind.
Yes.
I read that in high school. We did a whole series, I think, of The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, and then we read that in conjunction with Death of a Salesman.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Which I feel like was a good pairing.
No, that is a very interesting pairing, and I haven't. It's so funny because I've seen Death of a Salesman like several times, but it probably hasn't been 20 years. So I need to go and watch it again just likewise. To see like what I've missed, because that's Arthur Miller, right? And he's the one. He's the one, who knows how to speak that American pain. It's weird. Flannel Suit was by Sloan Wilson, who also wrote A Summer Place, really? which is also in its way about how the middle class has a hard time living up to itself after the war.
Yeah. Gosh, I wonder, I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, I really do feel like after coming back from such a horrific experience, the optimism of the 1950s and, early 60s as we remember it today feels a little forced. I think it's interesting where it's, and I'm sure it felt that way then, where it almost feels like after
like a performance, perhaps.
Like people are performing optimism to try and feel better about all the horrible things that they've seen.
It's not unlike someone who overindulges in alcohol, in that materially and culturally, for all those people who grew up in the late 20s and 1930s, it is, I would argue, it is for the vast majority, unlike any other time. They have all of these options that were not available to them before. They have all of this abundance that was not available to them before. And those that were here domestically during the war, they didn't have certain things simply because that was devoted to the war effort. And so once the floodgates are open, people can overindulge in materialism, just like they can overindulge and become intoxicated on it, and have great, fabulous houses and great, fabulous cars and clothes and all this stuff. And ultimately, for a lot of people, things like that, while they're fabulous, in the near term, ultimately it becomes shallow. It doesn't have substance. It doesn't, at least for many people, it doesn't end up satisfying them through the rest of their life. And therefore, I think that's reflected in those movies that we've just discussed. These people that are still struggling with the reality of what they came back from, and they're able to dull it with materialism, and the ability to travel within the country and buy things and all this other stuff.
And transform it so that in the same way that the Japanese trauma about atomic energy becomes Godzilla, which at first is a horror and later is an adventure. Right. There seems to be this weird human need to sublimate our own pain into our entertainment. Yep. And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that's a thing that we do,
It's almost the way that people cope.
Yeah.
It's how we survive.
It's certainly, I would say, on one level, therapeutic.
Yes.
It's a type of therapy via popular entertainment. It allows a lot of people to process things.
I mean, Scott, isn't it interesting though how different people will differ, will argue. Like, for instance, there will be people who will say, that one cuts too close to home with me. I'm having a hard time, they won't say it in these terms, but having a hard time sublimating that trauma, and so I don't find your comedy funny. I don't find your horror movie tasteful. because I'm still hurt by this thing that you're talking about. Whereas another person would be like, my mother was traumatized by tornadoes after they destroyed our home. She dealt with that by watching lots of tornado movies. So different people are different, right? And it's just fascinating to me that I don't know. I don't even know how to wrap that up. So
the way that people choose to interact with their own pain, whether it's avoiding it or whether it's confronting it through other outlets and other media, can be healthy in both ways. But I really resonate with the confronting it through different outlets, and I really think that horror movies and just the horror genre in general, films, literature, what have you, is, I mean, some of the most reflective art of its time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can get away with more in horror than you can in a straight drama. Admittedly, Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, straight drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
But but a lot of times if you look at big bug movies and different stuff of the 50s, you'll see those are the ones where you find women in more equal roles with
which is really a really interesting phenomenon,
right?
That a whole show could be done on.
I can't explain much of that at all, other than you can just get away with pushing the envelope more in genre.
It's true. We've noticed this in some of the movies that we've watched and talked about. We're going to be doing Tarantula pretty soon here.
Is
a favorite, and
as we recall, or at least as Dave and I recall, the female lead in that is a very strong female lead, in fact, and it's like, aside from when the spider appears and then she's has to.
I'm having a hard time remembering. That's the one because after a while, scientists running around in khakis, it all just runs together.
Ologists.
Ologists everywhere.
That's okay.
Great band name, Ologists in Khakis.
Yes.
So many ologists.
So no need to rack your brain about it. It's completely understandable. But
I'm pretty sure we watched it. I'm just mixing it up with them.
I feel like I should know. Like I said, I feel like I should have an encyclopedic knowledge of all of your Castle of Horror episodes.
Oh yeah, we probably did an episode on this. I can almost.
Yeah, but you guys have hit 300.
Now, congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, outstanding.
I really appreciate that, and I can't even believe it. We started like 9 years ago, and it's just so strange. We took probably about a year. There was one point where we quit for nearly a year. I don't even remember why. And then we came back, and we've been pretty solid ever since. Sometimes we'll take off like 6 or 8 weeks in the summer, just to go
summer vacation, to go surfing and to go to the cafe.
Right. Listen, every time I go to Laguna Beach, like, first of all, every time I go to LA, I actually go stay down in Laguna Beach, just so that I can stay at or near the hotel that's the one that's in this book.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You've been there. That is very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's different. I describe it being a little different laid out from the way that it actually is. But
that's okay, though. I think we all can appreciate that as history folk.
Yeah,
many of us have felt the draw of place and its importance. I mean, my wife and I spent more than a month at Gettysburg last.
Did you really?
August or last summer, doing an artist in residence program, and so that sense of place is palpable. It is strong. It's emotional.
Yeah.
And so I can completely get that. And I just want to throw this out there. I am firmly convinced that Scott and Mary and I, at some point in the next couple of years, are going to literally do a field trip that'll take us towards your neck of the woods, and we feel like we need to somehow end up renting a room at the Overlook.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Oh my God.
Doing just kind of a fun episode.
If you're gonna do the Stanley, which is
the
actually
the real name,
in Estes Park, Colorado, just make sure that you ask for the original building, because they've expanded it, so you've got newer sections. It's just like if you stay at Oakley Court, because for me, that pilgrimage was to Oakley Court, where some of the early Hammer films were filmed.
Yes.
And but if you're gonna stay, you need to make sure that you get a room at the original building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the one that shows up in Dracula and Christopher Lee and also Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, they
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
outstanding.
My wife, I remember when we went there the first time, we went outside and I went out to this road. Oakley Court is now like a tennis resort, but there's this road and there's trees over it. And I said, this right here is the road where you would often see like, you know, coaches like going back and forth. It's not a very long section. They just film the coach going back and forth. And which she was very indulgent in listening to because, you know, she's stuck in this conversation over and over.
I understand that. And I bet Dave understands that. Although Dave House is almost as interested in history as he is.
Oh, sweet.
But if one has one that has a mild interest or a partial interest, yes, you find that your significant other becomes the conduit for your interest, and they usually just politely listen, and you know, and then maybe after the trip's all over and we're back home, and then it's like, well, yeah, you know, we could have talked a little bit less about, you know, ABCD. But
yes,
it was a good time.
That's my whole life. Listen, Julia, my wife Julia has been doing this darn show. She doesn't even like horror movies.
I know.
She's been doing this darn show for like nine years, which is just a testament to something. I don't even know, like the fact that she's only walked out of one movie. She walked out of Return of the Living Dead.
Oh,
So that's
really?
Oh, Return, really?
Yeah. She was like, it was really funny. She was like, I got nothing else to say about this. This is where I stopped watching the movie. You guys can keep talking. Bye. And she left.
Great. I'm going to go back and re-listen now.
Yes.
I have to
I can
say,
think
Julia's commentary sometimes is just, it is so priceless and so dead on.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's like she levels everything. It's like, okay, brings us back to reality.
She's so much less precious, right?
Exactly.
About
that's right.
about
Whereas some of us are so completely wedded to, as you say, scenes in what might be otherwise pretty bad movies. You know, she doesn't seem to have that prejudice, or that, I should say, that bias. Yeah.
No, so it's neat when she actually enjoys something because you go, wow, this must actually be pretty good. If she's like, I really enjoyed it. So
makes you feel better about it.
Because her idea of a good movie is something like Mind Walk, right? With Sam Waterston, where they're just walking around talking for 3 hours.
Yeah,
sure.
So that's like, you know, I tweeted the other day, I was like, what movie did you go see with your significant other? What was the first movie? Yeah. And our first movie was RoboCop in 1987 in the theaters. 1987. We went to
which is a damn fine movie.
Yeah, terrible first date film.
Yeah.
That was
Was this your first date?
It was our first date.
Oh my God!
It was
like blow the top of his head off.
That's what I'm going to start doing with
Jesus. What were you thinking?
And did you pick the movie? I'm guessing.
God, I mean, that's like the scene in Taxi Driver when he takes
her to a porno theater.
Exactly.
And he's like, I thought you would like it. Yeah, no, it was so funny. Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Yeah, 1987.
Jason, I hate to do this to you.
We got to go. I know.
It's 9:27, and we could talk all night, but you have your own podcast to record.
Yes.
If you literally in a few minutes.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I jabbered on. Yes.
No.
But thank you so much. Yeah.
Hopefully, we discussed enough of your book rather than just our own individual meanderings that those who listen to this will get something out of it and make the book, get the book for themselves.
I hope they do. Yeah, and they can, you know, the Bookman, you can pre-order it now. It comes out in June. It'll be on Kindle and paperback, but for now, you can just pre-order the Kindle if you're interested, or wait and get the paperback in June. And I'm tweeting about it, and I look forward to hearing, you know, what people think.
So I think we get a pretty strong stamp of approval. It's
absolutely.
people say it's Monster Movie Happy Hour approved. It's a great read. Very,
Uh,
very enjoyable. It's rich. And real quickly, did I hear you suggest that there might be another story somewhere down the road?
in this universe?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh God, yeah. No, lots of them because
good.
because
I hear that.
it's a big world, and the the magical group that she's joining has a lot of people in it, so you can stick with her, but you can also get involved with other people.
Okay, fantastic.
Cool.
Jason
There's a lot
Henderson,
of places
thank you
to go.
so much for coming on and sharing the Bookman with us. And hopefully we'll get a chance to chat with you again sometime soon.
Uh-oh.
Well, thank you. I think I know what you said.
Yes, you broke up there for a second.
Yeah, it caught for a second, but who knows? That might have been Hal Jr. just sort of giving the thumbs up.
Yeah, Hal Jr. is trying to kill us if you haven't picked up on that. So good luck. You say hi to the whole crew, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon, okay?
I hope so. Thank you
Right.
so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah,
Thank
bye-bye.
you for your indulgence.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
I haven't even had any alcohol. I'm just so thankful that Jason was able to come on and chat with us for a while. And I loved hearing about his fascination with mid-century culture. I thought that was
It
fascinating.
makes me want to learn more.
Yep.
So I'm
Yeah.
excited
Yep.
to finish up the Bookman and then take a deep dive into mid-century life.
And that's ideally what you want from any author, is somebody who makes you hungry for more. That was achieved as far as I'm concerned. So
Agreed.
yeah, and it was good news to hear that there are, at least at some point in the future, forthcoming sequels or added books in this universe.
Yep.
So
I thoroughly enjoyed the characters and the way they interacted with each other. And I like the way he just shorthand describes the book. It's Gidget with demons.
yeah.
So it was.
That
it was
makes me
great.
want to, if I become more like Gidget, will I start attracting demons?
Absolutely.
Although,
A girl can dream.
see, what we didn't bring up, if we'd had more time, is I would have, the idea of Gidget as a demon fighter is somewhat not unlike Buffy,
Yes.
which is a whole, 20 or 30 years later. So it's an interesting
Right.
idea,
Yeah.
as a young woman as a demon fighter, which is really interesting.
We could go down another rabbit hole.
We will, as we always do. So, friends, thanks for spending a little bit of time hanging out and chatting. If I had anything left in my glass, I'd raise it. All I can say is cheers till we meet again. Good night.
Good night.
Cheers.
Hello, David Geister here. Hey, just one final note. We neglected to mention that you can follow Jason Henderson on Twitter at Jason Henderson. And we strongly recommend it. He's got some great bits there that tie directly to the book he just got done talking about. And then also I'd like to mention that, as always, our theme music, for the most part, was created by and used with the permission of Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech. Great work, great artist. Have a good night.